My name is Jason Barros, and I am the Senior Partner Program Manager here at SoundHound. I think it's important to understand use cases in which you intend to use this voice service. Anything that we can understand in terms of user behavior helps us identify those areas that we need to concentrate on and build in order to provide a seamless experience for your users as they interact with your products. Developing these use cases will eventually turn into requirements and then ultimately a KPI report where you identify a goal that came out of the use cases and requirements and track the iteration and improvement of the particular service. Goals should be identified in a short time span and not extend out too long. And the idea for that is you want to take an iterative approach. It's important that you're tracking where you are seeing positive improvements, but you should also expect to see regressions. And tracking those regressions over time through the use of a KPI report is important in understanding where you are in relation to that particular goal. I think it's really important from the onset that the communication channels are really well understood. It's important to spend a significant amount of time before the project even gets started. I've experienced a number of different projects where we started on the project and we started building a particular service, but the conversations weren't had ahead of time. And often when we get in that situation, we become reactionary to understanding the requirements and use cases and the changes in the project itself. If we spend a great deal of time in the beginning of a project where you're really looking at what is going to be involved, what is it going to take to stand up the service, what sort of engineering efforts are going to be needed on both sides, is important to get through before the project gets kicked off. There are going to be improvements and there are going to be regressions. And if you can talk about this ahead of time, it does a lot to mitigate some of the frustration that could be had on both sides. Spend the time in the beginning to establish relationships, to establish those communications, and to establish process. And it's going to make the entire experience a lot more rewarding. It's crucial for companies like SoundHound to get information that is clean and is QA'd and really represents what that user behavior is and what your product does. We ingest that data, that information, and we create voice services around the information that we receive. And so if we receive something that isn't of high quality, it's going to affect the output of that particular voice service. And then most importantly is just understanding that these are very complicated systems. There's a lot of information that goes into them, a lot of testing, and it's important to get the feedback from that testing so we can improve the service. Putting together a proper voice AI service takes a tremendous amount of time. If you're exploring the idea of doing everything internally, usually the time it takes to realize a product is almost always spent in figuring out what that approach is going to be. While it might be a time well spent, you won't be any closer to that final product. Partnering with companies like SoundHound is important because you're really standing on the shoulders of what we've done in the past. And a lot of the trials and tribulations of putting together this voice service are already behind us and well understood with companies like ours.